Katie, is the recording working? Fabulous. Great. And I get the alert on my phone that we're now in business again. So we are in an RDA meeting. We've approved the minutes, and now we're going to have a public hearing on the RDA tentative budget. And Steve, is there, or did we approve the, we did approve the minutes, right?
We did. Yes.
I think so. If not, aye.
Let's just redo it.
Let's just redo it.
Let's just redo it.
Okay, I made the motion to, or I will remake that motion to approve the May 6 RDA meeting minutes.
And Bill can resecond it.
Bill seconded it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. And we have that on the record. Next up, we have a public hearing on the RDA budget, which is before us. We've recently spent a fair amount of time looking at the RDA. Steve, are there any comments that you want to make on the RDA?
Well, these numbers you see in the right-hand column, the tentative, in terms of revenue coming from these three project areas, I need to compare those with the latest information we've been given as estimates. So I may have some revisions there before you adopt this next time.
Will the county give any updated information?
Well, they do give you projected or estimated tax increment from each of these project areas. They may end up being...
I just got that today.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll get these plugged in, updated. I don't think they're going to be terribly different than this, but they did...
They did make the point that we should budget high, because if our budget number is low, we either have to do a revised budget mid-year to be able to get the money, or we lose the money.
No, they didn't.
Well, they said in order to spend that, if your budget wasn't matching the higher number, you'd have to amend your budget in order to use that additional amount. I didn't get the understanding that you wouldn't get it sent to you, but you'd have to go through an amendment process.
Well, that's what I say.
Okay.
Maybe it's just so assumed that you'll make the change, but why put ourselves in the position of having to go through an amended budget?
Right. So we can cushion it, but somehow identify what that cushion is so that we don't spend money that we don't in fact get. Yeah.
Agreed.
Steve, before we have the public hearing, could you remind us the expenses that go in that?
Sure. On that expenditure area?
$8,000 in board expenses and the administrative services expenses.
Sure. The 8,200 is, that is a portion of your monthly.
So we allocate a portion of that generous city council stipend
Right.
to the RDA.
Because you do spend a considerable amount of your meeting time there. And the 163 is a calculation of the time of various staff members and some of the overhead costs and so forth of running the city get paid by the RDA. So that's a transfer into the general fund. And there's a spreadsheet that was being reviewed and updated from time to time. We haven't increased it.
That to justify it? Or
Pardon?
hasn't? It looks like a pretty big jump between.
Well, you're looking at several years back, the 143. The 163 has been in place for, this year, and we're just stuck with it. We're not proposing to bump it up. I think that we're spending, I think 5% of my time was estimated as part of this number for RDA, and clearly, it's clearly
Not adequate.
But so I didn't want to mess with the formula though this year and just stick with that. I think it's justifiable, but I didn't want to go through the brain cell death of trying to update it right now until things settle down and we can make a more reliable projection of update the spreadsheet on which this number is based. Does that answer your question?
I would guess I would almost argue to the extent that you have to increase the revenue side, I'd put a heavy dose of that in this administrative services side to reflect the reality of what's gone on in the last 90 days and what's going to go on in the next 90 to 180 days.
To represent the time of staff, you mean, that's dealing with these issues? We can review that.
I respect
So
that.
so maybe you don't change the basic formula, but you have an addendum to the formula because of specific
stuff.
2017
One time.
one-time
Right.
some amount.
At the same time, we've been working to find ways to make sure we have positive balances.
Sure, I don't want to
Yeah,
complete it, but
No,
Yeah.
but from an
But-
accounting perspective, you're reflecting what's actually happened. So I get that point. But yes, burden a fund that's already looking to close its gaps. Not exactly what you want to do, but
So I'm willing to look at that and comment on it again later to you if you'd like.
Other questions for staff? or-
But let me note a couple of things. I
Okay.
want to make sure that those listening, the vast audience on YouTube, for
probably
example,
2 or 3.
that the biggest expense out of the RDA is the debt service for the Performing Arts Center. And it is going to be, as the number shows there, $590,688. That's got $2,500 in it for trustee fees, but otherwise, it's the principal and interest payments due this next year. And then we have tax increment payments to the several parties, and I've tried my best to estimate what those will be. And then we do have a plug number. I'll call it a plug number. This is where it says other obligations, $176,000. That's the yet to be allocated or determined what that would be used for. Okay, with that, I will point out that the $76,800 is the estimated or projected monthly rental from the Center Point. That's showing under the expenditures because it would be deposited into the Theater Reserve Fund, the restricted fund. And then the $12,450 is our estimate of property insurance for that building. There's also about $1,500 for board liability insurance we need to put into this. So that number will be bumped up a little bit because our liability policy has a amount assigned to the RDA board.
That's in addition to the property
Yes. Yeah.
insurance. It's a lot of insurance.
Well,
Good risk management.
Insurance is a valuable thing.
I hate it too.
Any other comments before we open the public hearing and hear from our insurance community? If not, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing and invite those present to comment. You could get your name on the record in the RDA meeting. Seeing no one wishing to comment, I'll close the public hearing and turn it to the council for any discussion or questions. Anything you want to?
And by the way, I should note that this one you will adopt in 2 weeks because it's not subject to the truth and taxation process. So we'll need to adopt it on the 20th.
Okay. And you anticipate
We'll
making
bring some
with
tweaks.
some tweaks?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
If there are no other discussion, then I'd look for a motion to adjourn back to city council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. We're back in city council meeting. Main Street Waterline Replacement Project. This is Randy's big moment.
Yeah. And so I'm going to have Randy explain what the project is, and then I will speak to the funding of the project, because we've spent some time, Jake and I and the Marcus, reviewing the the financial position of the water fund. I want to speak to that. I'm confident we're okay going ahead, but I want you to feel confident as well. But
Kevin,
I'll do that after you explain the project.
Kevin and I have spent the last couple of years trying to work with UDOT to get this project. This is on our list, and it starts at the junior high. It used to start at the north end. We've determined we can start a little bit further south, just before the driveway, the south driveway, and then it'll extend to the end of the city. The project, we've asked the state if they would put off their slurry seal. They were going to do a micro seal on the street a year ago, and they've put it off for us so that we could do the project. So we need to do the project before they slurry seal, which they're going to do next year with the micro seal.
Which is actually more substantive
Yes,
than a slurry seal.
it's a thicker slurry seal product they're going to use, and the street is really becoming very poor because it's not been slurry sealed for a long period of time. We've also met with Davis County School District. They're going to be replacing their driveway and replacing their main line based upon our discussions with them, because we were going to replace their meter and go into their driveway at the south end. We want to do this before school starts, get that done, and we're going to start after the 4th of July so that we're not impeding anything on the 4th of July. So that's the date we want to start. Now, our bids were not quite as good as we hoped that they would bid. We bid a little later in the year because we're working on the park bid project, and the state held us up. We had 2 or 3 things that we had to get as exceptions from the state. We asked for the depth, which will save us on the cost of import fill, and we won't have to be as deep and interfere with other utilities. So we got that from the state, and it took us quite a while to get that approval. We also got them to approve not having to use flowable fill. Now the state, anywhere on a state highway, requires you to dig it up, and instead of putting dirt back in, they require you to pour concrete on it. We've had a lot of problems with concrete. We don't like that product, because then any other utility comes through and it's hard to dig through it. And you know, it's interesting, the gas company wanted to do it down there and put flowable sand around it and then put concrete over it, and they don't even compact the sand, and it's kind of a joke, we believe. And the stuff we've had to dig through has been like really hard to dig through. So they've agreed that we don't have to put that in, and so we're concerned. The bid is good. It's not as good as we wish it were, but we still think we need to do the project, move forward. We've also met with the Episcopal Church, working with them because it'll go by their property as well. So we've got most of the property owners in line with what we're trying to do. We're going to do it in 3 phases in order to try to get the water back on as quick as we can along the project line. So we think it's going to be a great project. The prices for the materials came in very good. We're using ductile iron pipe that will be a thicker wall, and we're amazed at the price that we got on the ductile iron. So those prices came in very good. But we think if we rebid it in the spring, we'd have problems with timing, and we don't think necessarily you may not get a better price. And the timing is in the spring, you have to wait till the state will let you do it too, because in the spring, they won't let you put asphalt down or dig their street up. So the window is fairly narrow. And also, the irrigation company, the Dual Creek Irrigation Company, did a bid at the exact same time, and it's the same contractor, but the irrigation companies agreed to allow ours to become the most important, and if they have to go into next year, they'll do the irrigation work next year. So it's a pretty big project.
But their intent is to replace that irrigation line at the same time.
Well, no, actually, they're not going to be doing Main Street. They're going to be doing east and west ones in several areas that are crossing Main Street. But no, they're not doing it in the exact same area that we're doing it, so.
Does the Main Street line need replacement?
Yes, it does.
And we can't talk them into,
It's in a different place. It's actually on the far west side,
We're replacing on the east side.
and we're replacing on the east side, so it may not be an advantage. They're so far out on their projects, and they're not in harmony yet with what we're trying to do. But we're grateful that they're trying to do the crossings across Main Street before Main Street is overlaid.
that's what I'm worried about, is the timing of the overlay.
Yeah, the slurry seal, the micro seal. They're going to do as much as they can prior to next year. And they've got several other projects they're going to be doing up in town. They're going to be doing some looping. In fact, tomorrow they're going to borrow some water trucks because their main down Parish Lane has failed. They've got some problems that they got to fix some leaks on Parish Lane.
Has that been permitted? I get some complaints about that dead grass.
Yes, yeah.
What's the timing on that?
Well, that's the problem, is they can't get it fixed. The state hasn't given them any permits to actually do the work yet, so
So
they're trying.
would it be helpful to call Robin has Chris Peterson's number on
Have
speed
telephone
dial.
number. I don't know all the problems why, but they're having difficulty getting the permits for it, so. But they're gonna borrow and go water people's lawns and the shrubs and everything along Parish Lane, because their line between Main Street, I think Fourth West, or even farther down, is
Can
dead.
we suck that out of the mosquito-infested waters along?
Our little bayou.
The bayou over by your house, have you
No,
know?
no, I'm talking about the one it's the same one that Paul always complains about, the other end of the park.
We have,
Oh, yeah, it's
on the north side of the
better
park. Have you been down and seen that lately?
Yeah, I've seen how low the water level
The
is.
water level's gone down. We actually, because they built the reservoir, they put in a pipe very deep, and they're sucking all the groundwater out of it. We're gonna have them leave that pipe in there. And so periodically, we're hoping that it'll go down another foot below what it was originally, but we're gonna leave that pipe in there. We've asked them to extend it to the surface, leave it in, and we may periodically put a pump down inside of it to try to, I'd be doing this on public TV. We're gonna try to see if we can't.
No one from the Army Corps is watching.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, we're going to allow that so that we can, when we need to, dry up
I
that
think, I
area.
think it's great. It's nice
So-
to see the water level drop.
Yeah, so it worked out very well. Hopefully, it won't get plugged.
So back to the Main Street, can you give us any idea, how long will residents' water be impacted or businesses' water?
Not very long. For
Days or
not well,
hours?
Hours, yeah.
Hours.
8 hours during the day.
What's the time frame of the project being done?
It'll probably be three months long, 3 to 4 at the most. Depends on
Starting-
how much they do with Dual Creek in between may cause it to be a longer. We have to be done by October 15th.
But you want to get the part of the, so the junior high piece, the piece that's being done
Critical.
first, starting July 5th or
Yes.
July 6th, and then.
Yeah, we got to get the crossing done so the crossing guard can cross the street.
So then how rough will the condition of the road be?
Shouldn't be too bad because it's going to be on the extreme east side of the property, or east side of the road, from the curb and gutter out maybe 6 feet, 8 feet from the shoulder of the road. So there should still be 2 lanes traveling down the road, and people should be able to get down the road fairly.
And then you'll repair it with your regular asphalt fill, and you're just glad that the new thicker micro seal will help smooth it all out after that.
We'll go over the entire
Yeah, it
width
should
next
go over
year.
the entire width of it, yes.
How far north does it have to go?
It'll start just that south driveway, it'll be about 200 feet to the north of the south driveway,
I was noting about 750 south.
just past 750, just a little bit past 750, which is on the west side. So the road that comes up on the west side, it's just a little bit farther north than that. It was going to start actually all the way down by the cemetery. We found on the west side, though, that it was a PVC line on that side. We did not have to replace that. So we went out and potholed it and found it. We actually were going to have to do some storm drain work too, and we don't have to do that. So the project is a much quicker project, less expensive than, well, more money than we thought it was.
Yeah.
But it would have cost us even more had we have had to have done that as well. So it's going to be a good project, and should
Now,
work
did you
out.
know from UDOT a pretty solid idea of when in 2018 they'll be doing the overlay?
Fall's what we've heard.
Okay.
That's what they've
Because
told
I'll
us.
Not until
uh,
the fall
That's what
of
they've told
next
us.
year?
I'll just state a reminder to the council that the planning commission was planning on trying to get a line painting plan in place to submit
Oh,
to
yeah.
UDOT, because they had said that they would do official bike lanes at no cost, which is an extraordinary opportunity. If the planning commission, after studying it, decided that that was what they would want to suggest and recommend for Main Street. So if we could send a reminder down that pipeline, that that's going to be a time-sensitive thing.
Sure, I think it'll be after July, after the 4th probably, sometime after that. I don't think it'll be in the spring. That's what they've told us.
For
so.
the
For the
overlay.
microsill,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. So I agree, we need to
But
get.
I'd rather be prepared sooner rather than
Absolutely.
later in case they change their minds.
Yep. Yeah, I know they've agreed to that. They've agreed to
Yep.
stripe it.
Okay, Steve, what
Yeah.
else do we need to, did you want to talk about
Well-
the cash flow issue?
Yes, I want you to be aware of this. You might remember last year, you saw this document prepared by Kevin and Randy. It's a 40-year water line replacement plan. And obviously, the further you get out in 40 years, the less reliable it is and the more changes there'll be. But this first page is the first 5 years. And there's 3 segments on there for Main Street. But in order to not to exceed the revenue flow, we're only going to do 2 of those 3 segments. Now, one of those we thought was asbestos cement pipe, so that's the one we were going to leave out, but in fact found out that's cast iron.
That's correct.
And that's one of the segments that's included in this project. Generally speaking, 2 of these 3 segments will be addressed with this project. The other segment will have to wait until some years down the road just before UDOT does another resurfacing. And we'll keep our fingers crossed in the meantime. It's just too expensive to handle it at the same time, all 3 segments.
The state also, we need to do some storm drain work. We met with the state and asked them to help fund it, and we didn't get any funding because we're going to move the storm drain to put our water line in. So that's
on
another
that third segment.
That third phase
Steve
was talking about.
But the funding for those 2 the legs were approximating the funding that we're going to need for this project. Let's talk a minute, though, about the position of the water fund. The audit at the end of last year established that the water fund had a loan from the drainage utility fund of about $561,000. Now, but the water fund also had over $300,000 in restricted cash, that is water development fees or impact fees. The auditors, the former auditors, now accountants, recognize and acknowledge that could have been applied towards that cash deficit, that loan difference, to reduce that down. We're going to use that in the current budget to pay for the debt service that has occurred this year, because we have a impact fee study from 2013 that shows that justifies that, not only using all the current impact fees for debt service, but impact fees yet to come for several years will be supported by that study. And so with that adjustment, that will happen in this fiscal year that we're in before we end. In fact, you may see it in the May report. And it looks like by the end of this current fiscal year, there'll be a positive. We can eliminate totally that due to, due from between the water fund and the drainage utility fund. And it's looking like a couple $100,000 of cash that will be there as we carry forward into next year. However, this project in total, with the construction contract, the materials, engineering, and some contingency, is going to be in the neighborhood of $640,000. So there will have to be, through part of this next fiscal year, a loan reestablished between those 2 funds, but it will be repaid, if you will, by the end of this next fiscal year between those 2 funds. So it's a cash flow issue in order to allow this project to be done in the first 4 months of this next fiscal year.
And that repayment is coming out of the increased water fees that were approved last year.
Well, yeah, it's a 3-step increase, as you know.
But
So we get another 10% impact of that this next year. So we're comfortable going forward as long as you understand that. But I feel pretty good about the financial position of those 2 funds, water fund and the drainage utility fund. We won't undertake any significant drainage projects in the next fiscal year unless they're towards the end of the fiscal year, next spring.
And we've completed the
Well, the frontage road culvert project is not complete. I mean, we've paid for most of the work's been done, and we've paid for that, but There's a little bit left, waiting for that fiber line still to be
Right.
relocated, but that's not going to have a significant impact on what I've just described to you. So we're doing okay.
Thank you. Question?
So unless there's questions, I'd recommend you award the bids as shown in the
I would make
staff
a motion
report.
that we award the bids for the Main Street Water Line project as reflected in the
Staff recommendations.
staff recommendations.
Second.
Is there a second? So we moved and seconded, we award the bids as recommended.
Can we just lift that into the motion, Katie?
Orman Construction in the amount of $469,251.90 for labor, and Western Works Water Supply in the amount of $81,718.08 plus tax for materials for the Main Street Water Line Replacement Project. Any further discussion? Something this large, let's start the voting with Tammy.
Aye.
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 That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Before you leave, can I ask a question, Randy?
Uh-huh.
So is the reservoir done?
No, not quite done. They still got to finish the lid on top of it. They're getting close to. They got most of the water line. You're talking about the park project. Yeah, it's not quite done yet, but should be done fairly soon.
And I think
So-
Kevin sent me an update today on the other work that's associated with that too.
Yes, why don't you tell them the other work as far as the curb and gutter and some of the paving and so forth.
Talking about parking lot
Yes,
expansion and
right.
the trail.
And they're going to get started on that
He said
fairly soon.
June 19th for the west
Mhm.
parking lot expansion is when that's going to start. And so we'll go from mid-June
Yes.
to mid-August.
Mhm.
This is probably the time to mention the other, though, shouldn't we, Mayor? There has been slippage on the
The
design of
landscape bid continues to slip.
And I'm not surprised. I mean, this Main Street project with the Dual Creek addition, who's also hired ESI Engineering for that design, has pushed off the start of the design of landscaping phase. I think they have started it now, but Kevin told me yesterday that it would be, the earliest it could come to you would be the second meeting in July instead of the first meeting in July. So I just want to moderate your expectations. If grass gets planted, it's going to get planted late in the season. It's not going to grow that much this year. It will still need next spring and summer, I presume, to get to the point where it can be used. So that means you kind of got the last part of next year that it could actually be used, as opposed to postponing the bid until January, and you'd have the grass grow throughout the year, and it would be ready by the following spring. So you really have one season of the 2 seasons every year, if you will, of playing that you can get in next year by trying to do it this year rather than next year. And Kevin predicts that you're going to pay 10 to 20% more now if you do it in the summer like this, the bid, as opposed to waiting till January. That's not news you wanted to hear, but I thought I'd better explain that to you. Your reaction to that, we can still prepare the plans. We could still go out to bid, but he's concerned about the impact of that on bidders who, if you're not going to go forward with confidence to award the bid, it has some kind of a dampening effect on the relationship.
Let's get it prepared. I still think there's value in getting it prepared and seeing what those costs are, and if we have to rebid it, we have to rebid it in January.
There's the seasonal demand that might factor in some savings, but there's also the construction market right now in Utah, and I think that maybe just putting it off longer just increases that pressure as well.
I don't know, it's,
Well, the
Can it get
UDOT.
any- can it get any hotter?
No.
He refers to the UDOT data they've collected, and that shows
Yeah.
clearly bidding in the winter is much better than bidding in the summer.
okay, well, they don't have the bid ready, so
No,
Yeah.
no.
let's not let them off the hook till we get it ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did we ever get our loan?
Or what?
No, we did not get a loan from the rec center. They were waiting until we saw the actual bid amount and the actual amounts, had it prepared. So I expect, as typical with most of our projects, when they go to do the detailed bid preparation, it'll be higher than they estimated last time, because it always goes up and not down. And,
Well.
I'm overgeneralizing.
Yeah, you are.
We just had a very expensive bid, but.
Yeah, this water line one was more expensive than we.
I'm keeping some heat on Kevin, with the understanding that if it's a bad decision to bid and pay more, then we'll wait and do it next year. But I'm not as worried about the relationship between Kevin and a couple of contractors as getting the best price and pushing it forward, so.
Well, the other consideration, and you just don't know what the weather's gonna do, and although, yeah, it may be late, you know, we were growing, I was cutting my grass into November last year.
Yeah, you have another late season, but if you bid that in July, are you gonna get good prices for that? Who knows, but, you know, you could bid it and reject all bids, and someone comes back to you in November and says, hey, I could do this. But let's prepare the materials and then try to make the best decision we can.
Okay.
Okay, next item, Mayor's Report. We'll see if we can make this quick. Council of Governments meeting. They asked for feedback to UTA. I provided the feedback to our representative, Brett Milburn, that we appreciate the Prop 1 efforts that UTA is making. They've come to us with a lot of plans. None of those have come to fruition because they claim they've been blocked by UDOT, not allowing them to make improvements on Main Street. We kind of said, that's not something new to us, but interesting to see the two bureaucracies at work. But if you have other feedback regarding UTA, please share it with me or Brett Milburn, and they're in a listening mode right now with that board. The other big emphasis was the Arrive Alive effort that UDOT is making around summer safety with the traffic accidents go way up in the summer. We put up a poster outside about the 100 most dangerous days, and they just want to spread awareness about that. And there were a few other minor issues. Fire service, there a couple of issues there. We mentioned the October 7th Truth and Taxation hearing that will happen at the Bountiful Fire Station. On June 19th, which is our next fire board meeting, the board agreed to hold a public hearing. It's not required by law, but hold a public hearing on the proposal to sell the Centerville Fire Station and buy new land for a new fire station. So if you have citizens who are saying, when's the public comment on this? It's June 19th at 5 p.m. or by the time we get to it, it's usually 6 p.m., but June 19th at 5 p.m. at the Bountiful Fire Station. And you're welcome to comment as well. So the fire board intends to have open house at the Bountiful Station regarding the property tax increase that's been proposed by the service area. They want to know, are there any other cities who want them to host an open house in our local city hall, as well as the one, kind of the centralized one for everybody? So
Yes.
I personally would like to see him have one.
I
you
think
would,
so.
okay. Is a late, I think the plan would be to try to do it close to the August 7th hearing, or in the week or two before that would be, or the maybe the 2 weeks before that. It's a busy time. Chief didn't give you any time frame, did he?
I can't remember if you told me a date.
So yes, you would like one, and I think was
Oh, you mean for the one in Centerville?
for the one in Centerville.
No, he just said, he didn't give me a suggested date, no. Just wants to know if you want one and when would you propose? He would like me to come to the administrative committee meeting tomorrow with some possible dates, so we can coordinate that with the other cities, their city managers that are coming to the same meeting.
When is let's look at our second meeting in July. Maybe we could have one as kind of an open house before one of our regular city council meetings. Which
That'd
would
be the July 18.
That's quite a bit before. But
You wanna-
we'll be here anyway.
Probably ought to take several options. How about the week later, July 25th? That'd be another option?
Okay?
How about the let's see, we could do the Wednesday before the.
Normally you have the meet the council member, which would normally be on the 19th.
August. Yeah.
Is that an option? Are there no other conflicts that night, or are there other
That
conflicts?
seems like a smart time.
That's not a bad time.
I'd rather leave the Tuesday open times for us to have our own property tax open houses, because I think that's a little bit of a separate discussion, and those are normally our meeting nights. So I feel a little more comfortable with it being on that Wednesday that's normally the.
Off Wednesdays that are not conflicting with planning commission, so what are those dates?
And that one that's normally an open invitation to come learn more and talk more anyway.
The
You know.
19th.
So July 19th?
So that'd be July 19th?
So if we go to July 19th or July 25th is kind of two
26th.
options?
Oh, 25th.
Yeah, which either one is fine with me, but I prefer the Wednesday.
There's also, I guess, August, well, we have a city council meeting on the August 1st. So we could evaluate whether we're going to do something then.
So you could have an August 2nd, is that the Wednesday?
I will be
So that's
gone
another,
then,
oh,
but-
you'll be gone then? So, all right, this is fire, you're on the board, you better be there. So I've got 2 dates so far, July 19th, a Wednesday, and July 25th, a Tuesday.
Let's start with that.
And what time did you say?
We didn't.
Oh.
6:30 is usually on the starting time for the Wednesday meeting, right?
The Wednesday
When-
meeting?
when is
For
the council meeting?
Talk with your council.
Oh,
I'm just saying line it
Oh.
up with the,
6:30?
We do a 6 to 8 open house or something like that.
Yeah, that would work.
6 to 8, okay. I'll see what I can do tomorrow with that.
Okay. That's all I have.
I don't have anything, city manager report. I've spoken enough.
Great, miscellaneous business. We had a proposal for glass recycling. I don't know if there's any update there from Alice.
she sent an email, right, about something she'd investigated, but I didn't plan to say anything on that, so,
So, did all of you get that?
yeah, I
It
believe
was a while
so.
back.
Yeah,
A while ago.
yeah.
And there was an assignment, but I don't know who got the
I thought
assignment.
Jake took the assignment
Yeah,
to.
and
check.
I talked
Bountiful or-
with Ace.
Okay,
He
yeah,
got
and
the
they-
assignment to talk to Ace, and somebody
Yeah,
else was
Ace.
going to contact
Bountiful City. I
Bountiful
thought we
about
were
their
gonna ask
experience.
Alice to do that.
Did
Yeah,
Alice
and
do
so
that?
then Alice got that email to all of us, and I guess I assumed Jake would follow up on contacting the contact information that she included in that email, but.
Oh.
And then, yeah, I mean.
Do you want to
Can-
report on
The
your
assignment-
discussion with Ace?
Yeah,
before
it's
we're-
pretty simple. They kind of laughed at me, and they said there isn't really anything in Utah there's no place where they recycle glass, mainly because it's cost prohibitive. They don't make money on recycling glass.
So they just collect it and put it in the landfill, or there are people that are collecting glass? Or they suggested there's no real market for it?
There's no market for it. They're not selling it.
Yeah, I don't.
So
Yeah,
what,
it's very
what
hard.
follow-up do you want to do? Does anyone want to share that with Alice and ask if she wants to, or?
I'll maybe, yeah, I'll give her that follow-up, and then I'll ask her if she wants to look into it further.
Yeah, just respectfully, if we could request it for the next month.
Yeah.
Anything
I don't-
you
it's
can
not-
avoid putting on us,
It's
maybe
not a
the next
rush
2
thing
months.
Anyway, it's just an idea
Yeah.
Citizen had that she wanted
Just
to follow
postpone
through
it.
on. Yeah. And then the other thing that we were gonna have Jake check on was the idea of switching the green can to be
Oh.
the blue can. But that's
Did you
something we
talk
can
about
wait
that?
too, but let's just keep it on the list.
Okay, just give us a couple of months to get to that one.
That's fine.
Okay, you got that down, Jake, for a to-do list? All right, next up was name of Founders Park. Anyone want to take the lead on that?
Well, I'll take a lead on it. Mr. Sessions had called me and asked me to come to his home and gave actually quite a bit more detail than we got tonight. I felt bad that he couldn't give that himself. And then I talked to Steve, and reading the minutes from when they were changed, it sounds to me like it was more or less changed just for a contest. I mean, and the people that were here that were opposing it were all people that wanted it to be the Smith Park. So I don't see that there was a large group of people that didn't want it to be Smith Park. I checked with the county, it was Smith Park from, early on through until they did do the contest. So I really feel like where the Smiths, they feel like there was a stipulation stating that it was supposed to be the Smith Park. I've tried to find it, I can't find it. But, it is documented that it was them that gave the ground, and it was them that, they donated it all. They donated the grass seeds. Some other members of the family donated the restrooms and brick for the restrooms. And so I'd really like you to consider.
Have they petitioned other councils before in the past? I'm just trying to
No,
figure out what's
no.
created.
Yeah, so every few years this comes up, at least
Okay.
in my experience, at least twice in the past. The centennial year, Mr. Sessions, there was a lot of effort that went into it. If you recall, we tried to suggest a compromise that we would put a plaque on the pavilion that recognizing the Smith family and their contribution and call it the William R. Smith Family Pavilion, something to recognize the Smiths. First, that there was, yes, this would be a good idea, and then Phil changed his mind and said, no, I don't want to do that.
But why, if they gave them the land and it was for the park and it was the name and it was changed for just a contest, and as you read through, I don't know, I have a problem. I feel like we should change it to.
Well, let me just make this comment. First of all, that was really very cool history to
And-
learn.
And very generous,
And
great to learn about
I'd
the
be
Smith
very
family's
supportive
generosity.
of the plaque. And so I think what Paul was saying is that the council was supportive of the plaque idea, but then Phil said, no, we
I
wouldn't
want
want
the
that.
park name,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't want a plaque.
The thing that I would say is we could maybe learn from our neighbor Bountiful in this situation, where a few years ago, there was an effort to be historically accurate and respect the history, and a lot of money was spent to rename all the parks to their original historical name and build expensive monuments with the names of the parks. And I grew up in Bountiful. I still spend a lot of time there, and it's been many, many years since that happened, and no one ever calls the park by that name that the plaque says. So then it's just kind of confusing.
But see, for me, I still call that Smith Park because that's what it was growing up. It's, excuse me, it's not like we're going way back in history. It was Smith Park.
How many years has it been since it was called Smith Park?
Was it changed?
1989 is the
89.
minutes right here.
So we're not going back in history, and like I said, you can see it was done for a contest. There was nobody that came and said, this is the reason we need to change it. They just decided to have a contest, and so the name got changed. And this family feels like, they gave the land, they donated it. They feel like there is a stipulation somewhere, if it could be found, stating that
My recollection is that past councils have made efforts to try to find that, any documents stating that, and like you said, we haven't been able to locate that.
And it is with the county. It was actually the county that they donated the land to, but then the city leases that land back for the park. So like I said, I just feel like,
I would recommend we stay out of it, but one idea is you could suggest the Smith family petition the county, who still owns the land underneath our park, to do something. And,
well, what do you
But
want
what'd they
them to?
do?
What do you want them
the
to do?
county could say, we're going to require you to change the name, or just,
Well, maybe they
I'm
could
trying to
find the
pass it off
record
to the
if there's a
county.
record.
But why do we need to? I don't feel like we have anybody against it. I feel like you have a lot of people for it, but I don't feel that there's anybody that's going to be upset by changing it. And like I said, it was only 89 it was changed, so a lot of people still know it as the Smith Park.
I respect that. I like the idea of the Founders Park that recognizes all of the
All the
founders and not just the William R. Smith family, but I respect that it was the Smith Park.
And it was the Smiths that created that park, and we wouldn't have it without them.
In my opinion, it would be a better recognition to put a nice big plaque, maybe a picture, and you know, name the pavilion or do something like that. But I think you'll find that some people wonder why you're changing the name, but the council has that prerogative.
I think a
to do
plaque
whatever
is
they
a
want.
richer solution. It honors the history more, because then you can actually know the history and why we're recognizing that
You
name at
change
all.
the name and still put up a plaque as to the history.
We do have a spook park.
We do have a Smith Park.
I think they probably got that one in writing.
Just,
I don't know.
maybe, I don't know.
As I reread the minutes that Steve provided, going back to whatever year that was, I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before, and that is that one of the councilmen's name that was involved in that vote was Erickson, who I know who that is.
You could speak with him. He'd be happy to give us his perspective.
So I can get some firsthand perspective. I apologize that I didn't draw that connection earlier. It was just today that I drew that connection. I had said to Paul and Robin a week ago, personally speaking, I am more inspired by Smith Park or Cutler Park or Hewen Park than I am Founders Park. I'm more likely to go look at that history than at Founders Park. Steve's comment to me was, well, but Founders Park recognizes all of them, not just one of them. And I can see that, but I'm just, from my own perspective, I would make that statement.
See, I would say it, Founders Park to me doesn't recognize anybody.
Right.
I mean, you know, that's, but like I said, I was raised where it was Smith Park, but to me, Founders Park doesn't, you know, it's not, you know, like, you're not gonna go look at it because it isn't, and it wasn't the founders that gave that park, it was the Smith family that gave that park and made it happen. And if it was ever not a park, it is stipulated that it has to go back to their heirs. So their heirs still have.
Do we have that part of the deal in
Yes,
writing?
that is in writing, and I talked to the county today. They have that stipulation where, when it was given to the county, that if it's ever not used as a public park, it will go back to the living heirs.
So you have checked with the county, and they
Yes.
have that record, but not the other
But they couldn't
record?
find the other.
Steve, when we talked before, you made a comment about you had tried to engineer a swap for the other half of the park in exchange for down by the library.
Right. The library is on property
you
owned
said-
by the city, and half of our park here is owned by the county, and they're approximately similar, they're at similar acreage.
And at one point in time, the county wasn't interested.
Right.
Now Brett Milburn supposedly is
Mhm.
interested.
Now they are.
Mm-hmm.
But we told them, get First South done first, and then we'll talk.
Oh.
And so I'd asked Brett today, hey, where are we on First South, when we're going to meet? And he said, well, I think we're making progress. The legal folks are getting close. I don't know if you've heard anything.
Yes, we're working on the exhibits and have traded a few documents back and forth.
I will verify that. I've seen her emails.
Okay, good. So back to the William R. Smith Park issue. You want to talk to Bruce?
I will talk to Bruce and report to the group next meeting.
I like that idea. I'm not aware of any of the other council members that are accessible.
Mike Barton, if he'd come, I don't know if he would or not.
Does he live in?
Mike Barton still
And
lives here in
Bill.
Centerville?
Oh, do you know? I
Bill
don't.
Nilsson is still here.
Is Bill Nilsson on there?
Well, but it says Nielsen.
Nielsen, oh, he
Is it
still lives in
Nielsen or is he
Centerville too.
Yeah, so
It's not,
it's
it's
not
not, it's
Bill,
the
it's
one up
not
on
Bill.
7th East, Carolyn's husband.
Oh, yes, he's here.
He's there, and,
Yes.
and
Doug,
Doug Nielsen's here, and so is
Mike, and Bruce.
the Barton,
Well,
Mike Barton.
if anyone has a relationship, let's ask them. That might be interesting to get their perspective on it.
I can talk to Doug.
Great. Thanks. So, anything else on that? Okay.
Nielsen.
Okay, talk to him.
Next, I don't have any appointments to boards or committee, but we have a need for a closed meeting. And the closed meeting will be
To discuss the character and competency of individuals, so we could let our recording secretary and Jake go while we do that.
So motion to adjourn the city council meeting, to convene a closed meeting to discuss the character or competency of an individual as provided by state code.
Second.
Are we gonna come back?
We're not coming back.
Are we going to have a work session afterwards?
No.
You are a glutton for punishment.
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, it's not midnight yet, so.
We don't know how long
All right,
the closed
so-
meeting's
so-
going yet.
So we need
either,
to do a roll call vote for that closed meeting. Stephanie?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Well, you know what, thank you so much for